Well, hey there, my friend. Welcome back to the show. My name is Deanna Yates, and you are listening to episode 263 of the Wannabe Clutter-Free podcast. Today's episode is a special treat. I am chatting with Ashlee Gadd, the author of Create Anyway, The Joy of Pursuing Creativity in the Margins of Motherhood, and the founder of Coffee Crumbs, a beautiful online space where motherhood and art intersect. Ashlee has spent the last decade helping mothers rediscover their creativity and remember that making art, whether that's writing, photography, painting, or something else entirely, isn't frivolous, it's life-giving. And in this conversation, we are talking about why creativity matters, especially during motherhood, how to clear mental clutter so that you can actually sit down and create, and what it looks like to set healthy boundaries with social media so you can protect your energy. I was particularly excited about this because, oddly enough, social media has been causing me a little bit of headache lately, so I was really interested to hear Ashlee's take on it. So if you've ever felt torn between caring for your family and expressing yourself creatively, or if you've been waiting for the perfect time to pick up your pen or paintbrush again, then this conversation is for you. And before we dive in, I just want to say thank you to you for being here. If you enjoyed today's episode, well, please tap that follow or subscribe button so you never miss a new one. And if there's something you'd love for me to cover on the show, come find me on Instagram. I am at Wannabe Clutter-Free, or you can join our private Facebook group, the Wannabe Minimalist Family. You can find show notes for this episode at wannabeclutterfree.com/263. And again, that's wannabeclutterfree.com/263. All right, let's get to it. Well, hey, Ashlee, welcome to Wannabe Clutter-Free. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. Honored to be here.
This is going to be a very fun conversation. But for those that don't know who you are, can you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Yes, I'm Ashlee Gadd, and I live in Sacramento, California with my husband of almost 18 years. In a couple of weeks is our anniversary. We have 3 kiddos, ages 13, 10, and 6.5. And I am a writer and a photographer. By day, I run a website called Coffee Crumbs, which is an online storytelling community for mothers. And by night, I do lots of other little creative endeavors kind of on the side. And I'm also the author of a book called Create Anyway, The Joy of Pursuing Creativity in the Margins of Motherhood.
I love that subtitle. And we are going to talk about that today because, as you were saying, like, you yourself are very creative. And so let's start with that title. It's such a powerful phrase. What does it mean to you? And why do you think it resonates so deeply with moms, that idea of create anyway?
Yeah, it's funny. My friend Stephanie, after the book came out, made a comment about how the title was very defiant. And it kind of made me laugh because that was not necessarily the thought process behind that title. But I don't know, when I think of the phrase create anyway, I just think of this idea of being called to create in spite of stumbling blocks, in spite of excuses, in spite of all the things that are going to try to convince us not to do it. So for me, I just love to tag that phrase onto anything. When I'm feeling scared, create anyway. When I feel like everyone around me is making better work than I am, create anyway. When there are dishes in the sink, create anyway. It's like you can kind of just tack it on to any form of resistance and it works.
I love that. I'm going to jump ahead real quick. I know this is not my next question, but you just said, and it's been hitting me lately pretty hard, and I talk about not having comparison syndrome, right? And that is the thief of joy. But it feels like as summer is here and you have a little bit more time and your schedule is a little more loosey-goosey, or at least mine is, it's easier to get caught up in looking for ideas of what to do and where to go. And then all of those, the social media comes into it. Let's just stop beating around the bush, right? It just comes in and you're seeing all these people do these amazing things and have these wonderful ideas and these schedules that look so effortless. And yet it's such a struggle for me to try to get all the pieces into place. So how do you deal with social media and that idea around not comparing and just do it anyway?
I have pretty strict boundaries in place with social media, and I would say that as the years have progressed, I have, I don't know, maybe taken my craft a little bit more seriously in more recent years than I did in the very beginning, and with just the way that social media has changed in the last handful of years. Like all of those forces combined to making me really reevaluate my relationship with that space. So I'm actually off Instagram for the entire summer. This is my second summer doing that. I usually take off at least 1 month or 2 months in the summertime, but last summer I did all three. This summer I'm doing all three. And I recognize that might not work for everyone, depending on whether or not you are a small business owner or something like that, where you feel like you really depend on that space to get the word out about your business and book clients and whatnot. I empathize with that struggle, absolutely. But I'm a really big proponent of having just self-awareness in how social media affects you. And so for people who are thinking, I've never taken a break, why should I take a break? I cannot possibly recommend enough taking a full month off. That's really my recommendation. I think a lot of experts would recommend that as well, as opposed to taking a day off or a week off. When you take a full month away from the space and you actually really pay attention to how differently you feel, because you will feel differently. I promise you that. If you take a 30-day detox from social media, you will feel the effects of it. And once you kind of journal through that process and you have that real solid self-awareness, it helps you establish a solid why of why you need guardrails in place, why boundaries are important. And so for me, it's really been through the practice of taking those breaks that has made it easier over time. Because I think in the very beginning, when I started taking kind of these little tiny micro breaks from social media, I could notice right away that I was feeling better, but I didn't really understand the full effect of it until I stepped away for a longer period of time. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
I think it does. I mean, I was just going to look you up on Instagram as we're sitting here because I think you have a lot of followers, because I find that fascinating that you're willing to take the time off and away from it. Yeah, you have almost 32,000 followers. That's a lot of followers. So will you okay, I see you have it on here, off Instagram until September.
Yeah, I always update my bio just because if people send me messages over the summer, I'm not going to read it till September. So I try to put communication out there. I don't know if anyone actually reads that, but yeah, it's good for my mental health and it's so good for my art. It's so good for my creativity. And I think a lot of people, that's maybe counterintuitive for some, right? Because they think in order to grow as a creative, in order to grow as an artist, you have to be out there producing work, sharing work. But for me, the process of making art, it starts with what's inside, what's inside my mind, what's inside my heart. And when I'm tending to those things, when I'm tending to my own imagination and I'm tending to my own wonder and I'm tending to my own awe, that drives better art. And so it's good for me to be in the personal practice of stepping away from all of the noise for a time, as often as I can, to just get back to, I don't know, like the real work of the quiet of being able to work on my writing and some of my other creative endeavors.
All right. The wheels are turning. They're spinning. I can see how that would be super hard, but I also can see why it is important and why it would be very, very beneficial, especially as we were chatting just before this. We're not planning on getting our daughter a phone before high school, but she is just going into junior high. She did just get a watch. I want to also model good screen time boundaries for her as well. So yeah, I can see lots and lots of benefits for this, especially as we're running into summer. All right, let's get back into, you were saying there, in the last few years, you've been taking your craft more seriously. How has your creative work evolved? Because you started with Coffee Crumbs and then you've written a couple books now. So I'm curious, how has your work evolved since also becoming a mom yourself?
Yeah, I was writing. I had a personal blog before I launched Coffee Crumbs. So I always joke, I just feel like an internet dinosaur at this point. I'm just so elder millennial with everything. I feel like I've just been on these internet streets for a long time. But my personal writing was really the catalyst for Coffee Crumbs. I had been writing online for a number of years before I became a mother. And then when I became a mom, I started really wanting to take my writing more seriously. I was starting to look around for places to submit my work, to submit my long form essays. And back in 2012, there weren't a lot of options, not like it is today. Today, there's so many places, so many literary websites, literary magazines, just a plethora of online options for where you can submit your work. But back in 2012, that wasn't really prevalent. And I was looking for a place to, just put some of my writing about motherhood online. And ultimately I couldn't really find the type of space that I was looking for. I was looking for kind of a hub of honest storytelling in the realm of motherhood and couldn't really find it. And so I set out to create the space that I myself wanted to exist. And I've been doing that for about 11 years now, which is such a grace. It's been such a gift, a profound gift in my life, not only to do the work, but to just be with the women that I've been able to collaborate with and dream alongside with, and yeah, just champion each other's creative work, not in spite of motherhood, but because of motherhood, has been such an empowering, beautiful experience for me. And yeah, this question of like, how has my creative work evolved over the years? Thinking through just becoming a mother and how a lot of my work shifted and changed as I transitioned into that role. I think one of the key ways my creative work has evolved over the years is similarly to how my motherhood has like morphed and changed over the years. When you first become a mom, you just want to read all the parenting books and you're just looking for the right answer, and everything is so black and white and step by step, and you want all the advice and you want to give advice to other people. And I just was such a know-it-all as a new mom. It's like I would just read all the books and then I thought I knew everything, and then I would just regurgitate it to everyone else. And I don't know, I think that I've been humbled so many times as a mother and as an artist. I've fallen on my face quite a few times since becoming a mom, and I think that humility has been a really wonderful teacher for me. And the way that I view both motherhood and art just has so much more nuance now. Like my propensity to seek answers in everything is not what it used to be. I've grown very comfortable living in the gray space and living in the unknown. And I've gotten really comfortable asking lots of questions instead of seeking answers or doling out answers. And I think that's really how I've evolved both as a mother and as a writer at this point.
That's so beautiful. Oh, yeah, there's a lot there. And it reminds me of, I was reading both of your books, and that's how the Magic of Motherhood book starts, right? I love the beginning of that, where you're talking about the mom in the aisle at Target and just kind of giving her that advice of like, I know you're scared right now, but it's going to be okay. And you're going to learn as you go. And yeah, I just love the beauty in what you said there. That was really, really sweet. I know a lot of moms think that creativity is a luxury. And I have felt this before. There's so much you have to do, right? I'll do this. I'll get to my thing after the dishes are done, after the house is clean, after the kids are asleep. But you say in the margins of motherhood. So what do you say to that mom that feels overwhelmed or guilty, doesn't want to make space for herself to create, or is scared to, or thinks she can't? What do you say to her?
I mean, I have so much empathy for that mom because I used to be that mom. So first and foremost, I think I would just put my hands on her shoulders because I have been you. I have felt that way. But I think the thing I would really just want to say, and this is a form of just flipping that narrative on its head, when a mom takes time to do things that make her feel alive, when she takes the time to fill her own cup, when she takes the time to do things that make her flourish as a person, everyone around her benefits, full stop. And so in the same way, we don't think of sleeping as a luxury. Maybe newborn moms do, but sleeping is essential, right? We don't think of eating a meal as a luxury. It's like eating a meal is essential. These are important things we have to do to take care of ourselves, to take care of our bodies and our minds. And to me, I put creativity on that same scale of this is a form of caring for yourself, caring for your inner being, caring for your soul, caring for your heart, caring for your mind. And it's not a luxury. This is important. And I think so many moms do fall for that lie that it's selfish to pursue those things or make time for those things or make space for those things. But I think a lot of moms would be surprised to learn that if they would actually start prioritizing it, the people around her will notice in a positive way. It's not that, she's disappeared from her family, but rather she is actually showing up with more love and more patience and more stamina and more energy, because those are the things that we get when we actually make the time and space to care for ourselves.
Okay, so flip it on its head. Think about the benefits you're going to get and think of it as a learning experience and the ability to show up humbly to try something new. I think I've struggled a lot with that in the past of like, why would I do something that I struggle with the clutter side of it, right? Like, why am I going to go to one of those wine and paint nights when I know I'm not going to put that painting on my wall? I just know I'm not gonna. So now I've done this thing and I'm going to just get rid of it. No one else is going to want this paint by number thing. I'm not going to pawn it off on anyone else.
Well, can I push back on you?
Yes, please.
So lovingly. I want to lovingly and gently, with all of the kindness in my heart, push back on you and say, because I think when we think about it that way, and I hear you, I don't like a lot of clutter. If I went and painted something that probably didn't turn out great, I wouldn't want it in my house either. Like I understand. I'm totally jiving with your thought process here. But in that line of thinking, we are only focused on the finished product. That's all we're thinking about. We're thinking about the thing when it's done and where's it going to go, instead of thinking about the hour that I spent creating it did something in me. That process, that hour that I took to myself to engage my creative self, to make something that I may or may not be proud of in the end, is almost secondary to the fact that we're actually just allowing ourselves to play and have fun and create something and make something. And that is a gift and it's good for us. And what if you think about that as more of an experience and less of what's the tangible thing going to be in the very end? That still doesn't solve the problem. I don't know if you just donate the painting. I don't know what to do with it. Put it on your driveway with a free sign. Somebody else will love it. I mean, art is, subjective like that. Somebody might think it's brilliant.
Who knows? It is what it is. But you're right. It's less about the finished product, and it is more about just the act of creating and the act of doing something for myself. So maybe that's not it. Maybe it's a different form of art, but maybe it is. Maybe I try it. Maybe I love it. Maybe I bring up a new hobby. Who knows? I've never really done it. You never really know. So for those moms that were listening, or just anybody listening to this, you don't have to be a mom, but anybody listening to this that's like, but I'm not even creative. I'm just not a creative soul. I didn't get that gene. Just didn't get passed down to me. What do you say to them?
Again, I say this humbly with all of the love in my heart. Everyone is creative. I actually believe that down to my bones. I believe we were created in the image of a super creative God. Ergo, we are all creative beings. And I think in our society, again, going back to that kind of idea of the finished product, we have elevated creativity on this pedestal to mean something that it doesn't really mean. Creativity does not mean you have to be a best-selling author to be a writer. It doesn't mean you have to be successful in the world's terms, or that you have to turn your art into a business, or you have to be running an Etsy shop for your paintings to be legit. We, as human beings, we are inherently driven to create beautiful things, to make beautiful things. And as moms in particular, we are doing that all of the time. Aside from, I do think a lot of women have what they would consider to be a hobby or a passion, whether that's writing, photography, drawing, painting, music, gardening, baking, knitting, ceramics. I mean, like whatever your thing is, I think a lot of women would be able to identify maybe one of those things. But zooming out and thinking about it, even in more generic terms, as mothers, we are creating all the time. We are creating memories. We are creating rituals in our homes. We are creating routines and rhythms and magic. And that's part of being a mom. And that's creative work. That is such important creative work. And I hate to hear women diminish that just because they're too afraid to claim the title of creative. You are creative. If you're listening to this podcast, if you have a beating heart and air in your lungs, you are creative. And I want you to believe that. And I will be honest and tell you, I still have to fight to believe that myself sometimes, especially when I'm like in a slump, as I get into sometimes. I have to preach that back to myself. So I guess I just want to acknowledge that too. It's not a one and done switch you flip in your brain and then you just believe it for your whole life. I think it's an act of belief forever to have to work toward really owning that.
Oh, okay. Well, I love that you said it's not one and done. I think that is a trap that a lot of us fall into. And even those of us that have been doing things for a long time, right? Life ebbs and flows, seasons ebb and flow, and something might be really difficult in your life right now, and it just throws everything else into a different spiral. And you're like, oh, okay. And then you just got to kind of say, okay, well, that was just a moment and we can start again and it's okay. And so I love that it's like, it's okay to have to start again. restart, and have those moments that it's not an upward linear whatever graph that we look at. That's not how life works. And then also, it was interesting to listen to you and watch you give that answer, because I see where that defiant came in, right? And you were like, I didn't mean for it to be that, but it's there, right? That underlying defiance of like, just do it, just try it and see, and just give it a go and see if it works and how it works. And if that's not it, don't give up, just try something else. So I like that.
There's always going to be a million reasons not to do it. Always. Even me. This is my whole shtick. This is my whole thing. I'm the hype girl for creativity. And even with me, I wake up every morning and think it would be so much easier to not write today than to write. You have to have a little bit of that rebellion in you to like fight through it anyway. So I don't know. I guess I just want to confess that too. I don't have it all figured out myself. I'm still working on it.
None of us do. None of us do. I think that is like the one thing I want to like tell everybody in the world. No one has it figured out. Like, we're all just working every day, chipping away at it a little bit by little bit, trying to make this thing that we call life better. And so, yeah, no one has it 100% figured out. I wish we all did, but we don't, and that's okay.
I think it makes this more interesting this way. That's what I tell myself.
Right. If life were easy, you would be bored. So there's that. Although sometimes I do wish some days were easier than others. That's okay. Before we get too far down this path, I want to talk a little bit about mental clutter, because I think that holds a lot of us back. For me, when I talk about getting rid of clutter, it's not just the physical, right? It's emotional, it's mental. There's so much that goes into not just our physical stuff, but just into life in general. And I think that's one of the things that holds a lot of us back. We're just tired. We're wiped out. We're overwhelmed. Our brains are full, and it just feels so chaotic. So how do you personally clear mental clutter and space so that you can actually show up to create, and not just to create, but also in your life?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I would say this is something I'm still very much working through. I think one thing that helps me with this question or this situation in general is really having that mindset toward just like really protecting myself as an artist. And that might sound like a pretty dramatic word, but I'm thinking even back to what we were talking about with social media and taking regular breaks from that space and other forms of clearing mental clutter. It's so important to protect our minds and set ourselves up for success. And it's really hard for me to come to a blank page when I'm feeling really overwhelmed and I have too much stuff in my mind. And so I guess just treating that curation process or that decluttering process as part of setting myself up for success. In the same way that a runner might lay out their running clothes on the floor the night before to make sure they really do it when they wake up in the morning. I think decluttering your mind can be part of that process of getting that done first before we sit down to create, so we have more of that empty space in our mind, because the empty space is where the dreams are born. I don't know, at least for me, it's really hard to dream when you have too much stuff in your head. And I don't have a deliberate 3-step practice I can share with you, aside from I do make to-do lists a lot. I do sometimes before I go to bed, I'll do a brain dump on a piece of paper to just get everything out of my head so I can sleep. And then I know the next day what needs to get done. But I don't really have any strict routines in place, other than I do try to prioritize that because I know it's really essential to making good art for myself.
And that's okay that you don't have a 3-step process. That's not what you're known for. You're the creative hype girl. Like, that makes more sense. I know you've talked about it, and I do find it very important, but I love what you said there. You said decluttering or curating, and I think they are the same. I think if you can approach decluttering as more of what do you want to keep versus what do you want to get rid of, it does make it so much easier. So I love that you just automatically put those two together. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but I love it.
Yeah, and maybe this would be like a practical example of that. I used to be a person who never ever quit books. If I started a book, I would finish it. I'm a type 3 on the Enneagram, just very driven toward accomplishing things like finishing a book. And for the longest time, I never, ever, ever allowed myself to quit a book halfway through. And I realized, probably within the last, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years, that reading for me is such a form of inspiration. It's really part of what drives my writing practice, is reading good words. And so if I start reading a book and I can't get into it, or the writing isn't flowing, or I'm just not jiving with it for whatever reason, I don't hesitate to just set it down and either come back to it later or not come back to it at all. And that to me is a form of curation, because I want really good words to live in my head. So I'm really careful about what I read, with the exception of sometimes when I'm on vacation, I just want to read a dumb book or an escape book or whatever. And I'm not trying to be like judgmental or make it sound like I'm some weird highbrow reader. I'm not at all, but I do take reading pretty seriously. And I do feel like I have an element of curation with my reading habit, if that's like a tangible example, maybe.
That makes sense. It comes back to the inputs. You're not going to get good outputs if you don't have good inputs. And I do wholeheartedly believe that. Like, the people you surround yourself with, you're going to act more like them. The books you read, you're going to take in those ideas and you're going to make them your own. And as they come out, there's going to be some form of that in there. Same with the podcasts you listen to and the news channels you watch and all of that kind of stuff. Your inputs do have a huge impact in your life. And so I think that's a great place to start clearing out clutter, right? If you find that you are not feeling fulfilled, or, you're just feeling off and chaotic, and maybe there's some way you can start to curate those things in your life to start to kind of shift how you are then, the outputs that are coming out of you, I think is a great place to start. Yeah. We got there.
Okay, good. Yeah, it took me a minute to circle there, but
I liked it. I liked it a lot. There was nothing wrong with that. Forming those trains of thought. Okay, so getting back to motherhood and creating, I think for me, like, one of the things that has actually gotten easier, obviously, as your children are younger, stillness is almost impossible, right? Like, it's impossible unless you're getting up early before your kids, you're staying up after they go to bed. Your nap times were miracles. And I feel for those mothers whose children do not nap. I know that is often a thing. And so it's easier as my child gets older, but I do think there is a tension between that need for stillness and then that nonstop nature of parenting. Like, you're constantly going, go, go, go. So how do you make peace with that tension while you're still continuing to create? Because I don't think you're only creating with your kid when your children are asleep. So how do you bridge that gap?
I feel like if we just keep waiting until the circumstances are perfect, right? The baby's asleep and the house is clean and there's nothing else to do, and then I can create my masterpiece. We are going to be waiting for a very, very, very long time. We could be waiting forever. And in the same way, there's a part of me that feels like creativity is like riding a bike. Like, if you just know how to do it, like, you're not going to forget and you could just hop on and keep the wheels turning. But there is something to be said for the fact that creativity is like a muscle and you have to keep using it. And so for these moms who, and I was there, I had the toddler and the newborn, and that was the phase of life where I launched Coffee and Crumbs. Like, I know what it's like to have to claw your way through the day and to be fighting so aggressively for that time for yourself. And I don't want anyone to give up on fighting for that time. I think if you can fight to get up early or whatever, work it out with your spouse or work it out with the babysitter, if you can somehow make that quiet time happen for you, I think that's absolutely worth fighting for. I don't want you to give up on that. But I also just really want to encourage women to live in the reality of their life. And if the reality of your life is little kids who don't sleep, you can still create anyway, even in those circumstances. It's probably not going to be pretty. It's probably not going to be super peaceful, but is it worth fighting for? Yes, I think it is. I believe that down to my toes. And I just don't want anyone to wait so long that they end up not ever creating anything. And I think that does happen. And I want to grab every mom by the shoulders and just remind her, like, you have permission to do this for yourself, and you should. I think your whole life will be better for it.
How do you stay motivated?
Grace of God, girl, just the grace of God.
Do you have a big vision in mind, like when you get started on a project? Are you like a one project kind of person at a time?
I would say I always have a few big projects swirling in my brain, and I always have lots of little projects. And you know what? Momentum is a really powerful force. And so I even continue to be shocked as a writer. And I'm not a person who's like, I write every single day. I don't write every single day. I write as often as I possibly can, but I don't write every day. But I continue to be amazed that sometimes just sitting down even for 10 minutes and putting words down on the page and getting something out that needed to come out is such a powerful force to get to the next thing. And so I think when you lose that momentum, when you go day after day after day, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, and you just keep waiting for these perfect circumstances, the longer you stay away from it, the harder it is to go back. I keep using running metaphors as if I'm a runner, and I'm not a runner at all. But I've heard from other people in my life who are runners that when you stop running for a long time and then you get back to it, it is just hard. You're slow and your knees hurt. And it's, oh my gosh, I forgot what it's like to put my feet on the pavement. And creativity is kind of that. But if you just keep at it a little bit every day, you get into that swing of momentum, and you can ride that wave for a long time. So going back to the like, how do you stay motivated? I think I always have a little bit of momentum going, and that kind of keeps me at it.
All right. Okay. I was thinking when you were answering the question before this about not starting or just waiting for things to be perfect. There was a study, or I've read it in some book. I got to figure out where I read it. But anyway, I will Google it and I will have a link below. But there was a photography teacher, and he basically told one half of his students, take at least one picture a day. I don't care. You just take one picture a day. And then at the end of the semester, you will submit your favorite picture. And then the other half of the students, he said, you only get to take one picture, but you get to study and prep and spend this whole semester working and like redefining and like figuring out exactly what that photo is that you want to take, right? And then at the end of the semester, you will submit that one photo that you took. So which do you think had a better photo? Clearly, the first one, because they learned from their mistakes and they got better as they went, and it just progressed over time versus those that, but I think a lot of us in our lives, we think before we hear that analogy, we think the second one is how we're going to be better. Like we're going to research what we want to do, and we're going to pick out the class, and we're going to get the right outfit, and we're going to make sure we have the schedule planned, and we're going to plan out the whole next 90 days so that we know exactly what we're trying to do. And then we either just never do it, or it just doesn't work out because we've just over analyzed it in our head versus just do one thing.
To piggyback off of that, those students who took one picture every day for 100 days, they had to overcome fear 100 times. They had to overcome imposter syndrome 100 times. They had to overcome their own doubt, all the resistance, all the reasons why not to. They had to, by the time they probably got to the last photo, whether or not that's the one they actually submitted or not, they were in such a healthy place of being in that rhythm, building off that momentum. And it really, truly is so powerful. Like just the more you do it, creativity begets creativity. I believe that in terms of our personal practice and in how creativity and art work in the world. Like art is so generative, and that's a really inspiring story. That makes me want to take a picture every day for 100 days.
See what happens. Hey, that could be your summer project while you're off Instagram. Actually, and it makes me think of a book series we're reading right now with my daughter. She is an avid reader, and so I often try to read the books just to keep up and be able to talk to her about the characters. And we're reading, it's The Unwanteds, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but right away you find out there's a creative world and a non-creative world. And so I think your kids would really like, the older two would really like this series. So you should check it out. It's called The Unwanteds. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of magic and there's a little bit of adventure, but it's a really fun book, and it talks about creativity. It just popped in my head. I don't know why I didn't think about it before. I'm right in the middle of it.
I'm so glad you just mentioned it, because we're gearing up. My kid's last day of school is tomorrow, and we're gearing up for a summer reading challenge at home. And so I'm going to add that to our list of approved books for the reading challenge. Yeah.
It's good. We liked it a lot. Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. So let's wrap this up by if you could offer a loving reminder to the mom who feels like she has lost herself in motherhood, what would it be?
This is such a cliche, and I wish I had something more original to offer, but I would just remind her that this too shall pass. And I know for mothers in all kinds of seasons, it can be so easy to feel like you're locked in this time and space that is never going to end. I remember feeling that way when I had the baby that did not sleep for the first 15 months of his life, or the phase where my oldest slept on the floor in our bedroom, or whatever. A lot of mine are sleeping related, but I think there's potty training. It's like there's so many different phases and seasons of motherhood where you feel like this thing that we're in right now, this habit, this thing that we just can't seem to break or fix or whatever, is just never ever going to end. And the fact of the matter is they always do end at some point. I think no matter, even if like maybe your circumstances don't change, that one specific season that you are locked into in any given time is eventually going to shift and change in some way. So just be patient and give yourself a lot of grace while you wait for that.
Lots of deep breaths. Yeah. Lots of leaning on your friends, which I know you have an awesome community as well. So why don't you tell people where they can find you if they want to connect more?
Yeah, well, you can find all of the motherhood work at coffeeandcrumbs.net. And right now we put out a seasonal collection of essays and poetry and photo essays. And so our summer collection is launching tomorrow, actually, if people want to check that out. And then if you are a mom who is wanting accountability and support and friendship and community around this concept of creating in the margins, you can check out exhalecreativity.com, which is our online community for creative moms. And if you want to keep up with me, I'm mostly producing work on Substack these days, and that's just ashleegadd.substack.com.
Awesome. All right. We will have links to all of that in the show notes as well. So it's just easier for people to find it that way. Just click on through. And then my favorite way to end every episode is with 3 rapid fire questions-ish. So the first one is, what does clutter-free mean to you?
Ooh, clutter-free means to me, I want to say just having space to breathe and having space to dream. That's when I think clutter-free, that's what I think.
Ooh, that makes sense. Fits perfectly with the creativity. All right. Number 2, what is making you happy right now or in this season of your life?
I just planted zinnias for the second time. I grew zinnias last summer for the first time, and I was completely obsessed, and I had cut flowers all summer long in my house, and it made me so happy. And I just planted seeds a week and a half ago, and the little sprouts are already starting to come up. So that's making me I check on them every day, like baby chicks. They're just little green sprouts, and I literally check on them every day as if they are like little animals in my backyard. I'm just so proud of them. I just give them little pep talks like, come on, guys, you can do it. Grow, grow, grow.
I'm going to have to look into this because we just had a lot of work done in our backyard. And so I haven't gotten a chance to plant anything. So if you're saying you've just planted something a week ago, I'm not too far behind. Maybe I could catch up and those might work.
You are not. And let me tell you, I am not a gardener. I am a gardener in my heart and in my spirit. In actual practice, I am just a person who kills a lot of plants. But that's all to say, if I can do it, you can do it.
Good to know, because I am also. Unfortunately, I did not inherit anyone's green thumb. All right, good to know. All right, and then final one, what is a goal you have for yourself this year?
A goal that I have for myself this year is consistency. And I'm really working toward building a consistent, sustainable writing practice right now. I don't have a lot of outward goals of I want to write a book or I want to do this or produce this many essays. I want to be writing as much as I can. And so I think just building consistency this year is a goal for me.
Love that. Ashlee, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was my privilege and honor.
Well, that was just the warm, creative hug that I didn't know I needed, and I hope you felt like you received that warm, creative hug as well. I love that Ashlee was able to kick my butt in a nice way, in a gentle and kind way, and inspire me to actually go out and try something new this summer. But one of my favorite parts about the conversation was her reminder that creativity doesn't need to be grand or perfect to matter. It just needs to exist. And whether that's a scribbled journal entry, a photo of your kids that you actually print out, or simply giving yourself permission to daydream again, it's art. you are creative. You as a mother have created a being inside yourself. So you are innately and inherently creative. So even if it's not like the traditional kind of art, you are creative in what you do in your life, and that creativity does matter, and it helps your children and your families flourish. All right. Honestly, one of the biggest takeaways for me is how much our environment, both digital and physical, can either support or stifle our creative spark. Again, talking about those inputs and how those inputs that we put into our life can really make a difference in what we output into the world. So if your mental load feels heavy or your to-do list feels like it's running your life, well, this is your nudge to clear a little space. Even 5 minutes can make enough space for you to create anyway. And as always, I'd love to hear what resonated with you the most. So come and share your thoughts in a comment or a DM on Instagram. I'm at Wannabe Clutter-Free, or you can pop into the Wannabe Minimalist Family group over on Facebook, as there will be a post up for this episode, and we'd love to chat with you. And if you enjoyed this conversation, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a quick rating or a review, especially on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and those really help more mamas find the show. Special thanks again to Ashlee for joining us and sharing her beautiful perspective on motherhood and creativity. And show notes, again, remember, are at wannabeclutterfree.com/263, so you can get all of the links that she talked about today. And don't forget, next week I will be back with another guest episode. This time it's with Paige Connell, and we're going to be talking about the mental load of motherhood, what it is, why it feels so heavy, and what we can do about it. All right, until then, take care, keep things simple, be open to letting go of more, and remember, I believe in you. I know you have a creative spark inside you, so let's see what we can do to get it out and create anyway. All right, I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wannabe Clutter-Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.